Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to connecTed. I'm Ted Cohen, and this is episode number 2 of our podcast. The idea of the program is to talk about people and technologies that are doing a great job of connecting people, and not artificially, but really, delivering real connectivity. We can go into a 2-hour debate on, what a friend on Facebook is. But basically, the idea of what I'm trying to accomplish here, and with the support of our team at MediaTech Ventures, is to talk about how technology, media technology, brings people closer together. And that's never been more real than where we are right now with COVID and the pandemic. We've seen in the last year that a lot of things that were interesting ideas about, would people want to stream concerts at home? Would people want to watch movies at home instead of going out to a theater? Would people want to sit and chat at the time, most people were familiar with Skype, and just sit and chat and basically connect. We now have Zoom, we have Verbella, we have Microsoft Teams, we have WebEx, we have all these various platforms that both businesses and people are using to stay in touch with each other. So media technology and connectivity has actually never been more important than it is right now, and things that we took for granted are, basically keeping us sane right now. People talk about Zoom fatigue. People talk about, having to be on calls with people. I think if we took it away, they would realize that they would be more isolated. It would be like, being in a remote Arctic station, on a ham radio. So I for one, at a year and a month, have no Zoom fatigue. I love talking to people. I love connecting, and we love trading ideas. But the big thing that's happened over the past, for most of us, for the past 2.5, 3 months, is the phenomenon of Clubhouse. And Clubhouse has changed the way a lot of people are communicating. I joke about millennials not wanting to pick up the phone and talk to each other. They'd rather text, even if they're standing next to each other. I'm still a pick up the phone person. So when I got invited to go on Clubhouse, it was like a fire hose of information. If you haven't been on there, it's iPhone only for the moment. There are some pirated, there are some not certified Android versions of it, but basically you have to have an iPhone or an iPad. It is basically being in, a virtual building where there are rooms everywhere, and they're discussing, I hate to say, but NFTs, non-fungible tokens, talking about the ethics of AI, talking about music in the 80s, talking about what do we do when pandemic is over, and what are artists going to do to, jumpstart their career. It has been literally a fire hose, a fountain of information. I have gotten to the point where I was averaging about 3.5 hours sleep a night. I think I'm down to 2.5 from seeing a room just as I'm ready to go to bed and discovering that there's a room that I just have to jump into, either to listen or to comment or to participate. But you can just sit in the back of the room very quietly, metaphorically. You just don't raise your hand, press the hand button or anything. And the information flow is unbelievable. So if you haven't tried Clubhouse, try it. Twitter is trying their version right now called Spaces. Instagram debuted yesterday their version of a 4-person chat room. And I think it's going to change for a lot of people how they communicate, because people have gotten used to sending short text messages, composing texts that don't get across the meaning of what they're trying to say. And we end up with a lot of misconstrued commentary, because, talking directly to someone works a lot better. In that stead, We're doing perfectly on time here. I'd like to bring on someone who I've known for a long time, and someone who I have infinite respect for. John, can you bring Zack aboard? Ladies and gentlemen, this is Zack Zalon, who is the CEO and co-founder of Super Hi-Fi.
Hi, Ted.
And hi, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Really good. So we met 22 years ago. I think, I mean, when Lisa Ferris, who's now at the Grammys, had just joined MCA. It might have been 20. Was it 2000 or 99?
It was probably 99. Before that, man. Honestly, I think it was probably 1997.
Okay.
It's a long time, whatever it is.
But as I explained last week, when the people that are going to be on the show, at least the first few weeks, are people that, I've watched their careers evolve, and I've watched them, just become superstars. Tell us a little bit about your background, and tell us about but first of all, how did you get started in music?
Well, I've always been into music. I just thought that my career would be more as a musician than as somebody who surrounded himself with music. So I came out to Los Angeles to go to music school back in the late 1980s to Musicians Institute, which at the time was kind of a very small performance-oriented music school. And that's where I thought that I would land. But as it turns out, I joined a band. I did a whole bunch of other things. And my life was guided in the very early days by people named Lisa. So you brought up Lisa Ferris. Before Lisa Ferris, there was a girl named Lisa Frank who introduced me to the people who owned the Troubadour.
The publicist?
And, no. Right. I don't know I lost touch with her probably 25 years ago, but she was running marketing for the Troubadour. She didn't want to be there anymore. She knew that, I wanted to learn more about the music business and see if that could help my band. And she actually introduced me to the people that owned the Troubadour and got me a job there. And I ended up managing the place and booking a lot of bands for a number of years. So that was really my first introduction to the business side of the music space.
And what was the Troubadour like then?
Fantastic.
What year? What year was this?
92 to 94, 91 to 94, 92 to 95. I can't really remember because, back then we had the keys to the bar and used that as often as we wanted to. And
was Doug Weston, the founder, still there?
He was actually still alive, but he wasn't really running the place or mostly owning the place. It was a guy named Ed Carian that owned it at the time. I think still does. But Doug was still around. We would go and see him at his house, once every 6 months before he passed away, and he did die while I was there. But I didn't love the booking side of it, and not because I didn't enjoy booking bands. I really did, but I enjoyed very much that part. What I didn't love was the fact that it seemed like a lot of bands that had incredible talent never really got the opportunity to be discovered. I saw a lot of bands that were what I thought were very mediocre in terms of talent that were getting huge label deals. And the most depressing aspect was when I was asked to book bands that had previously been multi-platinum recording artists that had played the Forum were now begging for an 11 o'clock Thursday slot at the Troubadour. And I saw that as a kind of finite opportunity for me. And I saw the kind of good side, but also the not so great side of where the music industry can really utilize artists the way that they want to. And when they're washed up, they're done. And that was pretty depressing for me. So that was kind of the second Lisa was Lisa Hendricks, who at the time was Lisa Jansen, if you remember her.
I love her.
She's amazing.
She's wonderful. Is she still living in Las Vegas?
She is.
Okay. And wonderful person.
She was managing a bunch of bands. She had helped me at the time. She had helped me get Motley Crue to play at the Troubadour and a bunch of other people. She was managing bands like Sass Jordan, if you remember them.
Yes.
And she had made the leap to interactive. I had been reading a lot of books about what interactivity was going to look like. It was when CD-ROMs were starting to become the web. And this was really before the early web. And I started to get really, really into it and started to do websites for people for free because I really enjoyed that. And it was really before a website was a useful business venture for anybody.
Well, if you remember, I'm sorry to interrupt. If you remember really quickly, I came out of Philips. We were doing CD-ROMs. We were doing CDI, which was this Philips proprietary CD-ROM format.
I remember
which
it.
over a 10-year period from 87 to 97, we spent $1 billion of Philips Holland money developing a CD-ROM platform just in time for you to get your hands wet, get your hands dirty rather, building websites. CD-ROMs became irrelevant right at the time we were like, okay, this could work. And then the visual web came along.
Yeah, and the visual web was amazing, and I was really fortunate to be there very, very early. And Lisa Hendricks, who had gone to an early startup called BoxTop,
Right.
They sent some business my way, and I realized, wow, I can actually get paid for doing something that I really enjoy. That is definitely speaking to the future of innovation rather than the past where things have been. And I figured if I could kind of surround myself with that and the music and artists that I love, then I could really do something that I would enjoy. And so that was kind of the second Lisa help.
And a lot of other people that we know came out of BoxTop. I think Jason Fiber was at BoxTop for a while.
Jason was absolutely. Kevin Wall eventually turned that into IXL. I mean, there were a lot of people early days. It was one of the first web ventures here in Los Angeles. And I was fortunate to be kind of on the ground floor with my own company doing a ton of work after that. And I took a lot of work from BoxTop as well. Like they handed me a lot. We had a great synergistic relationship for a long time. So that was really fantastic. And that's what got me into the interactive side, starting to understand advanced technology, starting to work on larger projects as I kept going along. And Lisa Ferris was kind of the third Lisa. She introduced me to you, but she also kind of brought me into the fold of Universal Music Group, where my company ended up building all of MCA Records platforms and a whole bunch of other stuff before eventually they offered me a job as the second, I guess, employee of a short-lived internet record label group called farmclub.com. And I did actually end up taking that job. And the reason that that's really important, and the reason that I'm so thankful that Lisa introduced me to that and recommended me for it, is not because farmclub.com, look at you, man. Dude, you are so dialed in.
So the backstory is
unbelievable.
Zach invited me to the launch party. And at the launch party, he's wearing the jacket. And for those of you who know me, I have a collection of tour jackets. This was the first interactive, web music business jacket. And I said, I'd love the jacket. And he goes, I'll get you one. And I said, but what if you don't? So why don't you give me the one you're wearing? And he did. And I wear it. I've worn it all over Europe, all over. It's one of the most, besides being a cool jacket, it's like a warm blanket. It's just really.
I can't believe you still have that. I'm pretty sure I gave you the jacket off my back and never got another one for myself. So, so you have more paraphernalia from those days than I do.
So in that stead, Journey sent me a Journey tour jacket in 1983. And it's, again, a winter jacket. It was all leather with that fleece lining. It looked like I should get into a B-52 bomber and fly over Germany. Great jacket. About a year ago, I realized my son didn't like it. It was never going to fit me again. I had run into Steve Perry a bunch of times at Good Neighbor, the coffee shop near Universal Studios. And I brought it with me and I handed it to Steve. We had talked maybe 10 or 15 times before that. And I come in and I hand him the jacket. He goes, what's this? I said, I felt it should come back home. He goes, what do you mean? I said, if you can autograph it and give it to a charity auction or whatever you could do with it, I just couldn't put it on eBay. I didn't want to run a post on Facebook going, who's the biggest Journey fan I know? And he really he was very touched by it. So, we can discuss offline if your Farm Club jacket needs to come home.
No, I feel really good. I feel like it's in a loving, caring environment that it should probably stay in for quite a while.
Okay. Well, then I'll put it in the estate instructions.
I think that would be great. Right. Upon your passing, it shall therefore be returned. Thereupon be returned to me.
Yes.
I think the reason my farm club was great was that first of all, the first employee there she was the general manager, a woman named Amanda Marks, who was really fantastic.
Yes.
And who ended up rising to pretty great heights at Universal. And I think she's at Apple now.
She's basically, from what I can figure out from the org chart, she's like the general manager of Amazon. Of Apple Music.
Well, she was
along
great
with
then.
Jeff Ronikowski's there with her, and there's a bunch of people. But from what I can see, who reports to who, she knows how to run the ship.
I imagine she does. The third person that was hired was a gentleman named Brendan Cassidy, who was really a brilliant technologist that they pulled out of Disney. And as it turns out, Brendan and I got very, very close to each other while we were there at Farm Club. And we realized that we didn't love the idea of the record label side of things. Record labels are incredible at elevating artists. That's what they do. They find, nurture, elevate artists to the peak of their potential, right? They're venture capitalists for musicians.
Yes.
What we recognized when we were there together is that we were both much more interested in the idea of entertaining listeners. And there's a beautiful synergy if you think about the way that the business has worked for a long time. The record labels elevate the artists, and that at the time, at least radio stations, radio companies were the ones that entertained the audience. And it was that great synergy. We realized we were more on the entertaining side than we were on the record label side. And we came up with this concept for how we could use some of what radio was doing really well, which were these branded entertainment experiences, but to do it on the web in a streaming way very, very early on, in a way that we felt could be extremely gratifying to listeners and also really beneficial to artists, and create that same synergy with the record labels, but to do it in the online space that hadn't really been done very much before. And so we wrote a business plan. We got that funded by Richard Branson, and we ended up moving together over to run Virgin Digital, which at the time, if you remember, was really the platform for Branson's digital music ventures globally.
Right. In a very, very cool office space on Wilshire next to the Art Museum.
Yeah, loved it. Was in that space for 11 years, actually.
Yeah.
And we did that for 7 or 8 years. And after that, started our own digital agency to start doing that for other companies. The same thing we had been doing for Branson. We ended up actually taking over the Virgin offices when they shut down the mega stores, if you remember that.
Yes.
I don't know how you can forget
it. Was it Glenn Ward?
Glenn Ward, and then Simon Wright, who was the global
Simon,
CEO,
yeah, Glenn and Simon
over to
were there, and
everything.
then they left, and you kept the space. I remember we had a great party there one night.
Yeah, I had many parties there.
Yes,
not
an industry party. It was an industry. It was a party to talk about. It wasn't your normal music company party. It was.
I had those too. So that's really kind of how I got into doing what we've been doing for a long time. We ended up having that digital agency for 13 or something years, building out digital transformation projects primarily for Fortune 500 companies, and trying to do as much for the digital music space as we possibly could in that time. And we had a great time. Brendan and I have been now working together for over 21 years. We ended up building out all of CBS Radio's backend platforms for consumers, all of AOL Radio and Yahoo Launchcast. We built the first really in the handset rate plan based music service called Move Music for Cricket Wireless, which was dedicated for low income customers, which was really great. We really, really enjoyed that project as well.
So I have to jump in here. So there's a friend of mine at Sony Publishing. It was now called Sony Publishing, formerly Sony ATV, a guy named Peter Brodsky. And for a lot of years, the Tuesday morning after the Grammys, so the Grammys were like our Sunday night, he would go have meetings on Monday, and we'd have breakfast Tuesday before he would fly back to New York. And we had breakfast on a Tuesday morning, and I said, "So how was the trip this time?" And he goes, "It was amazing. I saw some great stuff." He says, "Have you seen Move Music?" And I went, "No." And he starts telling me about this amazing, the Cricket service came with the Move Music service. And it was putting music in the hands of people who normally would be paying $10 to $15 to get a music service. Tell me the whole thing. I said, "Where'd you see it?" He says, "I was overseeing this, the Wilshire Group, Wilshire Media Group."
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, I work with him." I said, he's a client of ours. We're working on Hello Music, which is another amazing venture of yours. And I called Zach up and I said, "Tell me about Move." And Zach, in a very monotone, believable, he says, "I don't know what you're talking about." I said, "Move Music." He goes, "I don't know what you're talking." He says, he got confused with someone else. Anyway, there was a bunch of back and forth, and I got a call from a mutual friend / attorney who said, "Just stop talking about Move Music." And so I stopped talking about it. But it was weird I was doing work for Sony. I was doing work for you. I was working with that attorney, but I wasn't working with Cricket or Move. So I kept saying, what's the big deal? But I understand NDAs and confidentiality. About
Yeah,
3 months later, Zach calls me up. He goes, "What are you doing this afternoon?" I said, "Nothing." He says, "Can you come over for a while?" I said, "Sure. What's up?" He says, "I don't know if you know, but we've been working on this thing, Move Music." Never play poker with this guy. I believe,
Look, we were paid to keep our mouths shut, and I'll be honest,
I understand.
That was a great service because it actually was for people that didn't have the money to pay $10 or $15 a month for music, right? These were people who were stealing music that we were working to bring into the legal ecosystem. And that product alone drove somewhere around $350 million a year of net benefit back to Cricket. And it helped the record labels get into new markets, and it helped a ton of consumers. We're really actually pretty proud of being a part of that one.
Right. Talk about Hello Music for a moment, if you could, because that I thought that was amazing. I mean, I explained it. You're going to correct me, but I say it's overstock.com for musicians.
Yeah, I mean, look, we tried a lot of things with it. We got outside funding for Hello Music. Our belief initially was that we could help elevate artists to a new sphere by giving them the tools to be able to manage their own careers. There are a lot of those services that exist today. This was definitely way too early.
I went through about 6 different background choices for this show this morning, and one of them was my Artist Direct stock certificate.
Is that Singapore behind you?
That's Singapore. Yes, that was taken from our hotel window at the Swiss hotel across from the Mandalay Bay, not Mandalay.
Mandarin Oriental,
whatever that is back there, the ship in the background there. But that's an actual photo that I took at night. The room had an amazing view of the harbor.
Yeah.
But
Hello Music, I'm going to kind of push to it. Hello Music was an experience where we definitely went too early. We pivoted to be almost a daily deals site. And ultimately at the end of the day, it was just too hard to get funding. And one of the things that we realized is that, and I think most people who start ventures realize that it's actually better to be late than it is to be early. If you're too early on something, no matter how innovative it is or how many opportunities you might have in the future to succeed, you first have to survive, and survival is actually very hard. And
Agreed.
And that was a great. We loved Hello Music. It actually did pretty well in terms of revenue ramp. It was fantastic, but in terms of survivability, it just needed the industry to evolve, and it was evolving too slowly. And we recognized that early enough to get out. We had an exit. It wasn't a great one, but it was an exit nonetheless. And it was one of the lessons that we kind of, we chalked it up to a really important lesson. Don't be too early.
Right.
The other side of it is that I think back to the original point is that elevating artists is excellent, but it's just not where our expertise lies. Our expertise lies more in the area of entertaining consumers. And you have to you have to know what you're good at and what you're not so good at. And the things that you're really, really good at, the things you have a lot of experience in, those are the things that allow you to see around corners, right? Those are the things that allow you to see the future, but to see it not necessarily so far that it's going to be meaningless, but close enough that you can actually have an impact if you start investing in it, if you start putting your money where your mouths are. And that was another lesson for us, is that focus really matters. So don't be too early. Focus really matters. And ultimately, that's what drove us to Super Hi-Fi. That's what drove us to realize that we had an opportunity to make a massive impact on a market that we knew was about to shift.
So in my mind, based on what I know about Super Hi-Fi and the discussions we've had, looking at the implementations, I would say maybe you're not early, but you're definitely innovating. So it's not early in terms of the time is right for it, but I don't know anyone that was doing what you're doing right now before you started doing it. So you are the pioneers of it, but the timing, I believe, is perfect.
I sure hope so. Look, we believe that we were early, but this time not too early. And the reality is that the advancements in technology that were required for it to work were going to take a long time anyway. So we figured, okay, this is going to take us a while to get this done. I mean, I'll just, very, very quick backstory on what it is, because Super Hi-Fi is a platform of very advanced technology, but the technology is a means to an end. Super Hi-Fi is a vision. That's really what it is. We have a vision for where music services are going to go and what audio listening experiences are going to be like. And our recognition is that if we were right, that it would need a particular kind of technology to get there. And if we were able to solve many of the very daunting puzzling challenges of that technology that we'd be in a great leadership position when the industry started to pivot there. And the vision was kind of as follows. So we had been doing all these very high-end digital consumer transformation projects, right? We're building consumer platforms for companies. And these companies were very varied. Johnson & Johnson, we built their global diabetes platform management app for consumers. It's actually the most popular in the world today. Or National Geographic, we built all of their consumer mobile apps. We built the apps for sports teams like Knicks and Rangers and worked with, the Dolan family from Madison Square Garden. We built platforms for Ticketmaster and consumer financial platforms for Citibank and Experian. We're doing all these things and kind of understanding where the consumer trends were and what was important about building a brand. Well, we don't love, no offense to the companies, we don't love nature pictures or diabetes as a category. We don't love financial services or ticketing. It's not really where our passions are. It's just something we happen to be pretty good at doing. Our passions are in music and entertainment listening experiences. And what we realized was that when you look at a Johnson & Johnson as a brand or National Geographic, these are global brands that drive tremendous consumer loyalty across a whole landscape of different services that they offer. And they have some pretty distinct brand definitions, right? You know what Johnson & Johnson stands for, right?
Sorry.
That's okay, man.
That's somebody you know. Now, that's the one thing I forgot to turn off was the ringer. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
So, all right. So brands, right? Brands are important. Brand loyalty, brand affinity. These are things that everybody really talks about. And that what we learned through building all of these was that in order to build a brand that really has an emotional connection to their customer, you have to have differentiation and you have to stand for something. And what we realized when we looked around at the music services that were in the landscape, we were like, what do any of them actually stand for? And what really makes them different from one another? Right. So our logic was, look, they look different, right? I mean, Spotify looks different than Apple. But at the end of the day, the interface that people use is not the visual interface. It's the interface of their ears, right? They're hearing what comes out of the speaker. And when you're listening to an artist or a playlist from any of these things, how do you know which one you're listening to if you close your eyes? You have a song, and then you have a giant gap of silence, and then you have another song, and that's what defines the entire experience. Right. We believed that we could do better. We believed that the techniques of broadcast radio, and ignore the challenges of broadcast radio for a minute, just think of what they do. Right. The techniques of broadcast radio where they have voices, artist interviews, they have exclusive content, right? Yeah, they have tons of music, but that music is a part of the experience. It's the stuff that's in the space between the songs that actually makes the big difference. And that's where we realized that we could build technology that allows at scale the digital music services to start to integrate some of those radio-like techniques in order to build themselves up a layer of differentiation and a layer of standing for something, a particular production quality or style that could capture a consumer's imagination and start to drive the same loyalty that our customers out in the other worlds did, like J&J or in the CPG space or any of these other spaces that we were working with. That was the seed that kind of drove us to start thinking, this is interesting, and this is not too far away. This is absolutely critical, because as digital music services start becoming more and more competitive with each other, they're going to have to start looking at differentiators, because otherwise, if they're not differentiated, they're just commodities. And if they're just commodities, then it's all going to be baked around price. Right. And we thought that was a bullshit approach.
But let me ask a question here. I've heard the results, and the results are phenomenal. There was somebody who you may, Carlos, who worked over at Universal Music Group in business development. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Said to me one day in a meeting, I brought a client in about, yet another music app. And he says, Ted, the problem is we all think people care as much about experiencing music and getting, immersed in it. And all they want to do is listen to their favorite songs. And he says, sometimes we're too clever for our own good, because we go, wouldn't this be neat? You're able to go in and find out who wrote it, and then you can see a picture from Google Maps over their house, and then I'm being facetious, but it was all these, and then you could, if 80 people listen to your playlist, you could become the mayor of your block because you're the music guy, and all of this. He goes, sometimes it's just about playing really good music. Now, what you're doing is playing really good music in a really good way, but what is your feedback from either a focus group or from your clients saying, listeners have, remarked that there's this amazing difference before super hi-fi and after super hi-fi?
You know what? Here's what I'll tell you. First of all, we are clearly a listening experience company. That's what we are. Everything that we've done technologically is all in service of that. And so we're highly biased when we look at our results compared to what the average results are from any music service. But I'll give you a few different examples that I think point out why I think that most people who are thinking about this still are wrong, and that they all will change their minds. Unequivocally, I'm going to lay that down right now like a gauntlet.
Okay.
Everybody is changing their minds already, actually. So it's actually not that risky for me to say that. If it was a couple of years ago, I would have sounded a little crazy. Right now, it's actually almost becoming mainstream. So here's a few examples. When you talk about beautiful song transitions, the way that they would do segues, like they would do at a great radio station, all it does is stitch up the gaps between the songs and effortlessly and endlessly build this listening tapestry. We did this with iHeart on their digital streams as a test. Before we went live, they integrated our super hi-fi, what we call Magic Stitch AI, into their system. And they took 400,000 listeners randomly and assigned them to two cohorts. One that had standard gaps, one that had Magic Stitch radio-like transitions turned on. And they mixed those cohorts up every day randomly for 30 days. At the end of that period of time, when they looked at it, they found that the people who had Magic Stitch APIs turned on listened for 10% longer, at least, than those that had them turned off. And so that's a quantitative measure, right? Focus group, I don't know about a focus group. If you ask,
I was saying focus group, but what feedback do you get?
If you ask a consumer what they want, they're going to tell you they just want to listen to the songs that they want to listen to. Right. But the reality is that most consumers don't realize that they run out of things to listen to after the first 20 or so songs. Right. Lean back listening experiences are much more important than an endless catalog of searchable content.
Exactly.
It's just you need the endless catalog of searchable content to attract them to pay the subscriber fee that's going to then let you do the lean back listening. So that was the first great experience. Then let's look at the other kinds of results, right? Let's look at how Peloton has done, what their feedback is in terms of the overall experience, right? Our AI is integrated directly in the studios of the Peloton broadcast. So when you're doing a fitness experience with Peloton, you're hearing our AI make transition decisions in real time, right? We can't tell you what the quantitative result is for Peloton. What we can tell you is that when you look at their net promoter scores around the entire ecosystem of the experience, from getting the bike, buying the bike, getting on the bike, the instructors themselves, the fitness experiences, the ability to share that information with others, and the music that underpins all of it, it's at about the highest net promoter score that anybody's really ever seen in terms of the fitness category. We power Sonos Radio. Sonos Radio is their built-in listening experience. You take a Sonos device out of the box and you plug it in, you get these really beautiful, highly curated experiences that include artist radio stations as well as many as 85 other curated radio stations that are really tuned for the Sonos listener. They have artist interviews.
How are they programmed? Are they programmed via AI or they're curators?
They hand curated. They do all the music programming themselves, but they get artists coming to do interviews to talk about the emotional experiences that they had when writing a song. They have tons of voiceover that says, you're listening to Sonos Radio, or you're listening to a particular channel on Sonos Radio. They have a sonic logo that they got Philip Glass to compose, right? They really believe strongly that the stuff between the songs is important. They put all of that stuff in super hi-fi. And super hi-fi, we don't choose the music, but what we're doing is weaving it all together into this listening experience that sounds like somebody's sitting behind a console mixing the content together, but it's not. It's all AI happening in real time. And the only thing I'd add is you can listen to it, you see where it's going, but then look at their stock price and how all of the reports on the street are about how Sonos' services division, which is really Sonos Radio, is starting to have an impact on the visibility of the company in terms of long-term growth potential.
So
does that have to do with our AI? I can't tell you definitively that it does, but what I can tell you is that they have an extremely differentiated experience, and that Sonos Radio has quickly grown into one of the top listening experiences on Sonos, even though you have over 200 other companies that you could actually integrate into your Sonos listening, from Pandora to Spotify and Apple and all the others, on and on and on and on. So my answer to your question is a little bit circuitous, I realize, but I am telling you definitively that when you care about the experience that comes out of the speaker, instead of just giving people songs the way that record labels gave it to you, if you're able to weave it together into an experience that is potentially emotional and connects to your listener, if you treat them like a customer and not just like a subscriber, the end result is that they tend to listen more and they tend to have that brand relationship that drives loyalty. And that's what we're striving for.
Okay, so first of all, we have 5 minutes left. So if anybody has any questions, Johnny Z is monitoring that, and we'll post the question up here so Zach can answer it. There's no questions I can answer. Here's the question. Here's my big question for you, though. In the subscription wars, in the experience wars, you're the arms dealer. Are you selling the same weapons? I mean, if you do Sonos Radio for Sonos Radio, and I come to you and I go, we want to do MediaTech Ventures Radio, and we want exactly what you did for Sonos. Are you creating bespoke experiences?
No more so than Adobe is creating the same experience for all of the artists that use Photoshop as their tool, right? I'm not
going to accept that metaphor, because that's a little yes and no. In other words, if you're doing the same integration to Qobuz Radio that you're doing for Sonos Radio, don't they end up being essentially almost the same product?
I certainly hope not, right? We are a tool set, an extremely powerful tool set to help people to bring their vision, what they hear in their head for what their music service could sound like, to life in a way that uses very advanced, very scalable AI. If Qobuz ends up sounding exactly the same as Sonos, then I would think that that's actually a failure of imagination. These are just tools, and you can use the tools any way that you want, and you could certainly use them to craft it to sound like somebody else. But, you know, Sonos doesn't sound like iHeart, and iHeart doesn't sound like Peloton, and you got to kind of imagine that the opportunity really exists there to create whatever it is that you want. I'll give you a great example. We're working with companies right now to help them to craft these hour-long listening experiences. Okay? Hour-long listening experiences. The songs, DJs, music overlays, all these other things. Hour-long. It takes somebody in a studio an hour to an hour and a half to actually do an hour-long show effectively, right? Our system with the computation takes under 3 minutes. And so the theory is you could do thousands of these things and create your own way of doing a show different than everybody else's. You got to use the tool set, though, imaginatively. And it's our hope that our customers are all going to find a way to have their own brand voice so that the thing that comes out of the speaker is uniquely theirs, because I am completely convinced that differentiation matters. Quality and differentiation are extremely important.
I agree with you. Let me ask you, Mark Cantor asked the question, could you go a little bit deeper into how he popped it up again. The transitions work. In other words, is it basically doing the crossfades that we did when we did college radio?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. So first and foremost, it does these, we would call them crossfades, but these segues are built based on the songs themselves. So it's not just a crossfade, it's actually designed artfully so it sounds like a human is making that segue decision. Additionally, it selects content, not music, but it selects content to go in between or on top of the music. DJ interstitials, voice tracking, artist interviews, fully produced elements, advertising. And then it stitches those in as well so it sounds seamless. So basically anything that a high-end linear commercial radio broadcasting tool set can do, where humans are making all the segue decisions, the AI can do in real time in literally milliseconds.
So I'm going to throw another Lisa into the mix. Did you work with Lisa Crane at all?
Yeah, of course.
Did you work on Soundbreak?
I didn't work on Soundbreak, but I was at Virgin when she was doing that, I believe. And
so the reason
she ended up being head of like NBC Digital as well, I think.
Right. But she was doing Soundbreak. There was a live studio. Mark Goodman was there. There were DJs on Sunset in the BMI building next to the Dome. And they were trying to do 24-hour live radio online. It seems to me that you are realizing the vision of that in a more elegant way. At the same time, Mark Goodman ended up for a while at iHeart here in LA before he moved back to New York. And he was doing mornings in Phoenix from LA. And they ended up abandoning that concept because he wasn't in Phoenix. And as much as they tried to feed him anecdotal Phoenix tidbits, it became apparent that he didn't live there. So how, localization, personalization, that a sense of community, all those things, it seems you're trying to build those elements, but doing it in a way, like you said, that doesn't take, weeks and months to do it, but can be achieved with the proper, machine learning and whatever to create, elegant experiences.
Unquestionably, we can provide you an experience that sounds something like radio, but it's designed the way that you think it should be designed and has incredible amounts of localization and personalization because we can do so many choices, right? We're doing over 1 billion AI calls per month right now, right? And that's actually easily able to grow much, much past that. And I will tell you that broadcast radio is going to change too, right? I mean, broadcast radio operations, they're starting to centralize all of those. When in the future, when you're listening in Phoenix, it'll say everything about being in Phoenix, but the reality is that DJ is going to be somewhere in New York or LA or Cincinnati or wherever it ends up being.
So a bunch of local webcams. No, I'm kidding.
And I really believe, and this is maybe for another time, but I really believe that the impact that we ultimately will have on broadcast radio is going to be equal to that we have in the digital sphere, because I think that broadcast radio operators are starting to realize that they need to change the paradigm first so that they could be more efficient in their broadcast operations, but next so that they can make the transition to digital, because broadcast radio guys are great at music experience delivery. They're just not great at digital. And it's eventually those two silos will be bridged.
So did you ever get a chance to go to DC and see the XM studios when they were built?
Yeah.
So one of the things about that, one of the most amazing things about that was I think there were 20 or 30 studios that were, and let's say if there were 30, 20 of them were identical in that when you went in there to do your show, you pressed a button and that control board became your settings, your EQ. It was, I'm Zach, and it became the way you liked the monitors, the way you liked the levels, the tone and everything. My show's the show after yours. I come in, Ted's here, and everything changes. And I thought that was a real advance in how to do broadcast radio, that it streamlined other than adjusting my chair, this is my place.
Absolutely. That's a great example, right? They had a centralized music catalog, they had centralized controls, and they had commonality across the entire service.
Right.
And Sirius did the same thing. And obviously I would imagine now Sirius XM combined has all of that as well.
So when it
comes to digital experiences, now you're not talking about 20, 30, 40 broadcasts. Now you're talking about theoretically millions of broadcasts happening simultaneously, because what you want might be different than what the next person wants.
Right.
And you need to have the kinds of scalable tools that allow you to be able to deliver something that still sounds artful and human and like you care about what comes out of the speaker, but to be able to do it in a way that's really manageable and efficient.
Right.
That's what we built.
Looking at your peers, and this is always a tough question. Who do you think is doing something good, even if they're not working with you? Who do you think is at least, who do you at least go, you know what, those guys are giving it a good, are trying. They should be our client, but they're doing a good job.
I think there's great stuff that's happening all over the place. And this is why I said earlier that it's not as risky for me to make a bet the way that I was, because things are really progressing.
Right.
Look at Spotify and your daily drive. It's kind of like radio, right? It's got some voices, some news, some podcasts, and lots of music.
Right.
Look at Amazon with their artist interview series, where the artists are starting to actually introduce these things, where it's like, artists interspersing the mix with their own content, not elegantly interspersed, but it's there.
Okay.
That's great. Look at Apple with their mixes. They have these mixes. They're like hour and a half long shows that have all kinds of stuff that goes on, and all kinds of description that provides context. It's kind of like a Spotify playlist, but with a human that's actually kind of narrating it. They're all doing really good things. You could even look at Deezer. Deezer not that long ago announced a feature where it eliminates the silence between songs. It's not a natural sounding transition. It's just silence stripping. But they're getting rid of the 5, 6, 7 second gap and making it a 1 or 2 second gap. They're all heading there in their own way.
So what does it look like 5 years from now? Or 2 years from now, or a year from now? Pick it. I know 5 years is probably a long time. What did in the next 24 months, you and I used to talk about not the possibilities, but the inevitabilities of pretty much where we are now, in terms of that subscription it wasn't about iTunes and 99-cent downloads.
And I remember those conversations well.
And it wasn't about buying silver plastic discs. It was about having access to the fire hose of music, but in a way that, like you say, you touched on the thing that I always, stress is I want to lean forward to affect the lean back experience. I don't want to be leaning forward all day going, okay, now I want to hear this. And then I want that lean back, entertain me, and every once in a while, delight me, amuse me. And if you're annoying me, I'll lean forward again, and we'll make a slight course correction here.
I think that the services will continue to advance their individualization. The quality is going to continue to improve. And by the way, the number of people that will be using digital music services is going to grow significantly, both here in the States as well as in emerging markets. And that actually portends really great things for the music business in general, for artists and their opportunity to be elevated, and most of all for consumers who just want great listening experiences, to be able to find the company that gives them what they're looking for, and to be able to deliver that to them in an extremely consistent, high quality manner. We are not in the first inning anymore in digital music. In fact, I'd say we're kind of advancing out of the third inning, right? And the differentiators now, the models are all figured out. It's economically viable. The record labels know what they're doing when it comes to licensing. Consumers know what it is. The technology is there to support it. Now it's got to be about building your brand, differentiating what you do, standing for something meaningful to attract the kinds of consumers that are right for your kind of service. We are completely convinced that that's what the world is going to start looking more and more like. And it is our hope, obviously, because we've invested significantly in it, that we get to play a meaningful, positive role in that transition or in that evolution as the music services continue to get there.
I have 10 other questions. I'm not going to ask them, but I will ask one short one. It seems if everybody is getting it right for their, if they're super serving, their customers and delivering that elegant experience, churn starts to be de minimis. The hopping from service to service because they're offering 3 free months or whatever becomes a lot less attractive if you're really feeling warm and fuzzy with the experience you're getting.
Yeah, you are, by the way, that is exactly what I was talking about earlier without a lot of detail when it comes to the brand relationships that consumers have with their brands of choice. It's the reason why Cheerios is the only mass market cereal that's carried in Whole Foods. It's because a parent's brand relationship with Cheerios is so strong. Cheerios is the number one first food for kids besides soft foods for babies. They'll just go shop somewhere else, and Whole Foods recognizes that they have to break with their tradition of organic, natural, in order to serve customers, because customers are so damn loyal to Cheerios.
Right.
if the music services can create that brand loyalty, then you're right. Churn becomes a non-issue for them whatsoever.
Right.
And that's a really critical part of a long-term sustainable business. And that is why we believe you have to have something that identifies you as different, because without that differentiation, you can never build that brand relationship.
Well, I'm really grateful that Lisa Ferris introduced us. I'm really glad that I know Lisa. I know most of your Lisas. It's been, I was thinking after you said it, we've known each other almost 25 years, and we sat around talking about what if, and what if, and the inevitability, not the possibility of where things are going. And it's very satisfying to see your success and where everything is ending up right now. So I want to thank you for being here. We went 10 minutes over. I'm sorry, John.
Ted, thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's awesome to see your face, and hopefully we get an opportunity to get together sometime in the near future in person, which would be really nice.
We will do it socially distanced and covered up. But
I'm with you.
Thanks much. And my best, say hi to Brendan for me.
I will, man. Take care.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. And John's going to join me here in a moment we're going to talk about current events, what's happening in music and film and whatever is. If you saw the Golden Globes, John, did you get to catch them the other night?
Some of them. So
in the monologue, and I can't remember if it was Tina or Amy who said, when you think back about the amazing blockbusters over the past year, and then she paused and went, no, there weren't any amazing blockbusters over the whole concept of, movies. It was watching the Golden Globes and trying to discern between Netflix being honored for a movie and Netflix being honored for a TV series that are both delivered to you on Netflix.
Right.
And now we have Peacock. We have tomorrow. We have on Friday we have Paramount Plus.
Even Spielberg and some of those other big guys tried to storm in and stomp their feet and say Netflix isn't a worthy production company. They shouldn't be able to win these types of awards.
I've watched some really great stuff on Netflix, on Hulu. I mean, it's been in terms of like surviving the pandemic, there has not been a shortage of great content. Yes, there are people that are binge watching 12 seasons of Columbo. Not sure why. They tell you who did it in the first scene. Watch the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes, and then go to the next one.
That's right.
But the advances that are happening in how we experience. I hate the word consume. You and I have talked. We're not consuming content. We're experiencing media. We're experiencing film. We're experiencing music. If we consumed it, something would come out the other end. And in some cases, possibly it really would be crap. But, everything is literally, I was thinking last night that, as volatile as some of our family relationships can be, our interpersonal relationships, imagine if we didn't have DVRs that have a pause button. So you can stop while you're watching the World Series and it's the 9th inning and bases are loaded and the game's tied. And Coralie says to you, hey, so listen, tomorrow, do you want to go over to Costco? And you hit pause.
Right.
And you go, you were saying? And you end up.
Actually, for me, it would probably be like, oh my God, I'm going into labor.
No, exactly. But it's like, it's those moments of, I don't know where I would have been with my son, with Maggie, with anything, without a pause button.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't so much that it records, because it's always available. It was, you could pause.
Yeah, just live television. Well, and that hasn't even been around that long, right? I mean,
we're approaching 20 years. We're approaching almost 20 years. I got my first DVR. I got my first replay TV when I worked for Napster, because the guy who was the head engineer at Napster, the illegal Napsters back in '99, he had just left replay, where he was the engineer that didn't create replay, but created a lot of the software that actually made it work. So replay was the first one, and then TiVo was next.
Yeah, but like as far as like pausing live broadcasts, right? And we all know that we can pause a lot of that other content, but a lot of that stuff is and again, I don't watch a lot of television per se. I do have my subscriptions and I've got my shows.
Right.
It's no shortage of things that are on the to watch list and, and on the save for later list for sure. And there's just so much bandwidth.
Well, when you're doing the 2 a.m. feeding, if you keep the volume down, there will be shows that you're going to discover during the 2 a.m. and the 4 a.m. feeding that you're taking over for Coralie because she's been dealing with it all day. So,
Right.
John, how close are you to delivery? Your week?
5 weeks.
5 weeks.
So it could be 3.
It could be 3. It could be 5. It could be, you've got the bag packed already, though?
Everything's pretty much ready to go. Yeah.
The emergency bag. So, John, from the stuff of what's hot this week, anything that we should be focusing on?
Kings of Leon just announced they just released. They're the first, I would say, A-list artists to release a whole album on NFT. So that's a big leap forward for the non-fungible.
Well, since we're webcasting, I was in 3 clubhouse rooms where they referred to and then people were bringing up NFTs. It's sort of the new mood ring, whatever. It's NFTs.
These are the new ICOs, right? I mean, it's
the new ICO. So we're going no fucking tokens. We're like instead of non-fungible tokens, it's like, can we just talk about anything else but NFTs right now? And I'm sure it's going to be an interesting marketplace. Anything else there on the news?
Honestly, I think that the thing that people should keep an eye out as far as growth goes in investment and venture capital are a lot of these special purpose acquisition companies. A lot of these SPACs are massive right now, and you're seeing a lot of these conglomerates really kind of circle around and build multi-billion. There's last year alone, I think there's on average, I believe, like 5 to 7 SPACs a year that kind of come to light, and last year there were, I believe, 100.
Right.
So a lot.
And it's a weird model because we're raising money to go out and spend it, but we don't know what we're spending it on. But here's a rough idea of the shopping list we have in mind.
Exactly.
And so it's kind of it's like, can you increase my allowance for what? I don't know, but I'll figure something out. I'll let you know.
Whatever it is that you give me.
Exactly.
I like Mark's comment. Take a shot every time somebody mentions NFT. Mark, we'd both be dead by now, as you know.
Exactly. It's Charlie. It's Charlie the unicorn. Take a shot every time Charlie said. I'm going to start next week or the next show featuring some technology reviews of some gadgets and some services and whatever. If you have any thoughts about ideas for guests for connecTed, send me an email, ted@mediatech.ventures. Pretty much everybody knows I think most people know where to find me. We're really looking for input on ideas for guests, for feature segments. This is going to be something that evolves, and I want it not to be, just me spieling, as they say, but actually, again, connecting with all of you. My thanks to John. I also have to flip my face the next time, because when I go to look at you, I'm looking the other way. And when I go to look the other way, I'm looking at you. So we'll deal with that. I think I'm going to flip my face on the next one.
We should have been doing this, I guess. It's really funny. Larry White, that's a great question. Larry asked if these are going to be archived. They will be archived. Right now, we're putting all the infrastructure in place to support that. So you'll be live. You'll be able to watch these shows everywhere that you see it, and continue to come back to do that. And eventually we'll have the podcast. We'll have a designated channel so you can review it as well, and review it rather.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And the other, go ahead. No, you. But no,
so I wore. It's raining and it's raining and cold in LA, so I put on a sweater, which you don't get to wear very often, but it's below screen, so I just have to. And this was the best thing I ever bought at Urban Outfitters. They had it like on closeout for $9. I think I've worn it 100 times. For those of you who know me, technology and connecting people is my life. And if I wasn't getting paid for doing what I do, I'd probably pay the people that ask me to do what I do. And my appreciation to John. We're coming right up on the hour.
Mr.
And I think this one went better in that it didn't crash 5 minutes into it. Yeah. So yeah, I turned off everything except the ringer on my phone. I really am enjoying this. And I hope you are too. And so either send me fan mail or send me hate mail, but the feedback's important for us.
By the way, send a mail.
Yeah, please send a mail. I would joke and send a female, but then we're in trouble. Anyway, I'll talk to you all later. Thank you so much. And this has been connecTed episode 2.